All right. First try. My first time streaming on YouTube. We'll see how this goes. So I am frustrated because this PR that I filed has failed to build multiple times in a row in the cloud, and it does just fine on my local box. What's going on? So take a look, view more details in Azure Pipelines. I see the build failed in the test region. There's a ton of logs here. It's no fun to like parse all these logs because it's very, very noisy. Like all this is fine, 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 fine. And okay, there's a test failure, but it's not very pretty to look at. So I just back up. I go to tests, and here are the tests. And actually, you'll see the way I've got it orchestrated, which is based on the library template repo, by the way. Little plug for that. Use library template to start your repos or apply it to your existing repos, and it solves a lot of problems for you, including which is it gives you these really nice rundowns of where the tests failed. And so you actually see double here because this is the second time, this or maybe even the third time by the looks of it, that I've run this PR build trying to get tests to pass, and it has nothing to do with my PR. So I can expand this and see, okay, well, this test failed, and I didn't touch any of that code, and in fact, there's all these test failures to keep failing. And I can click on this, and this is the nicer view, right? Away from that console. You still get the stack trace, you still get the error message, and you can look at the attachments and get the full output of just that test instead of mixed up with all the other tests. So that's all nice, and I can investigate this. And in some future, stream or video, I will probably show what I can learn from this. But right now, I know that some of these I've already looked at some, and I haven't been able to isolate why they are unstable. And really, what I want to do is just have stable tests. If a test is not stable, it gets booted. That's kind of my rule of thumb, right? It is my rule of thumb. I want my test to pass every time reliably if it's a test that the team is expected to run, like PRs and CI tests. So I want to shut this test down and open a bug to track it. But is this really the biggest problem? I know that, because some of these are failing regularly, some of them aren't, and this is just one PR. I should be data-driven about this. I should make sure that I'm disabling the right tests and keeping other tests that are passing most of the time, not disabling them too quickly. So what I can do, I'm just looking at one particular pipeline run here. So if I go to the pipeline itself and I click on analytics, I see out of 10 runs, the pipeline pass rate is 40%. That is terrible. And 23% of the pipeline failures are due to tests. Now some of those could be legitimate failures. Like somebody sends me a PR or I send a PR where the test actually fails and it's supposed to fail because I had a bug in the change. But typically, the tests are passing before you create the PR, and so this usually is an indicator of unstable tests. But the one I really want to point to is the test pass rate. So 99.98% test pass rate is good, but it's kind of weighted because I've got thousands of tests, and it only takes one to screw me up, and that would be a very small percentage. So this isn't good enough. If I click on View Full Report, here in the last 14 days are the 4 tests that have failed in the pipeline, sorted by egregiousness, the number of times each one has failed. So if I was going to disable one test, it would be this one, and I can work my way down. I'm probably not, in fact, I actually removed this test earlier today because it was failing and it's obsolete. We don't need to support Windows 7 anymore. So I just deleted that one. These 3 are good and they usually pass, but I've got to take them out of the pipeline because they're failing multiple times each, and they're detracting more value. And I can still run them locally when I make a change in that area to make sure that they still pass, most of the time. And I will open up a bug track, getting them to pass reliably, so I can turn them back on. Of course, I can see that's 14 days, but what about 30 days? The numbers don't actually change, probably because I actually haven't been running pipelines very much on this particular repo. So how do I disable this? Well, so I'm going to copy the test name out. And you can even see the history, the specific history, drill in and look at the logs for each individual test failure there. And then over here in Visual Studio where I have the repo open, you can use Control-T for navigate to, paste in the test name. There it is. Now I want to disable this. I don't want to delete the test, and I don't want to disable it from local runs because, as we might see here, if I'm going to run the test locally, it's probably going to pass all of the time. And so it's good. It's good to have the test because if it starts failing locally, then I can either investigate it or maybe I have a real product regression. So while that's running, most of the time just building, it's generally a fast test. But I want to disable this. Now, it's hard for me to remember exactly what the keyword is, but I do use categories in MS Test or traits in XUnit to do this. So I'm going to just search for the trait keyword here, or the trait attribute. GC, stress, there it is. Test category, fails in cloud test. So let's go back, make sure I got the right test here. Yeah, that is the right test. I'm just going to paste that attribute in there. And let's go on and take care of the next one. Can't select that, unfortunately, so I'll just click on it again, copy that out. Again, I'm using Control-T to just jump to the method no matter what it is. Isolate test support. So that's commented out. I can still use this. And by the way, this is really useful. I used start, the Windows button on my keyboard, Windows V instead of Control V, which allowed me, because I already used the clipboard to copy the test name, right? But recently on the clipboard, I had the test category attribute, which is what I want. So I just used Windows V and I can paste that directly in there. There it is. Wonderful. That's 2 out of 3. Let's go back and get the last one. Or I'm not going to get the fourth one because it only failed once and I deleted it this morning anyway. Okay, so here's the last one. And Windows V. Now each time I do that trick, the history, the thing that I copied long ago gets farther and farther away. So sometimes when I do Windows V, after Windows V, I'll actually copy it again with Control-C just to put it back at the top of the list so it doesn't get too far down if I know I'm going to come back to it several times. Now the reason this attribute is, oh, by the way, yeah, the test passed, which figures, because again, it usually passes, just when it doesn't, it's annoying. The reason this works is because the way I run my tests, there's a filter to skip the tests that have that attribute on it, which looks like this. And by the way, I hate whether it's Azure Pipelines or GitHub Actions or whatever, I hate steps in the cloud that I cannot reproduce locally because I want to be able to see the test failures and reproduce them and things like that. And so actually the configure, I don't use the Azure Pipelines test task for a variety of reasons, one of which is I can't reproduce it locally necessarily. So I actually have this script that I run in my cloud build that is responsible for running the tests. So you can see my .NET test instruction with a bunch of switches. I won't go into each of the details of that, but notice this one here. The filter that I apply as test category does not equal fails in cloud test. So I'll repeat my changes real quick. They're all in the same file. That's interesting. What does that tell you? So got me through there. So by the way, these are disabled only because of my current context. If that got you. Like if I switch to net 472, boom, that's where it was failing. So let's open up a new branch. Disable tests. Yes. Commit that. Now, it's not, I'm not sure why, but it's not offering me to create a pull request right there. But that's okay, because I often use the GH tool anyway. If you don't know the GitHub CLI tool, that's awesome. I can just say GitHub PR create, and then if I did -F, that's going to create the pull request immediately. If I do -W, that means it's going to pop up a window. Let's see, I'll push this branch to my fork of the VS13 repo. And in this case, it wants me to authenticate. Ah, that was painless. Okay, so yeah, the -W switch brings up the pull request creation page so I can add more notes. Let's see, this is going to be I think I've got a test. So while that is building, and hopefully no tests will fail, while this is running, I'm going to go ahead and file a bug. Let's do tests. Tests ID. Now, the last thing is I mean, this of course reduces the pain and therefore tends to reduce the priority, and so maybe you don't get back the tests to stabilize them right away. That's a very real risk. Another risk, though, is when I finally do get to it, the evidence is gone because Azure Pipelines has purged the test results. And so I will always copy the failing test logs into the bug. Now, this is the one place this is not that before. I'd rather actually see the overall pipeline run, I wonder. Not actually sure. Okay, I guess I'll deal with this one. But it's nicest if I can just copy the whole output. But I'm going to say, so this is for this. For that test, failure. And this way, as long as the GitHub bug exists, I'm going to have the logs that I need to at least start the investigation. I guess there was no additional output on that one. So I'll repeat that and I'll file the bug, and then hopefully later we'll get some time to fix this up. But in the meantime, it's not going to block people with unstable.